G'day everybody, Xray X1 here. This is part 7 of the Xray X1 build series. In part 7 we will be assembling the ball diff and attaching the axle to the motor pod. Now the part of the diff assembly is on the axle because you have the diff, what do you call it, the diff plate mount, where the diff ring or the diff ring mounts onto the plate here, and it's actually already on the shaft, the axle shaft. So first of all, what we'll do before we get into that part of the assembly, we have these little parts here. These are to adjust the ride height of the axle. Because this is a motor pod, I'll just quickly show you. Because it is a rigid suspension system or a solid rigid axle, there's no independent movement of the wheels, and there's also, and it goes from side to side like so and up and down. So therefore, because it's all rigid, there's no traditional way of adjusting the ride height. What you would do, like for instance in a touring car or a buggy, whatever. So to do that, you use these little oval shaped parts that hold a bearing inside them, and they range from in the kit 3mm, 2.5mm, 2mm, 1mm, and 0, which is this. So they adjust the height in which the axle goes up and down, and that of course adjusts your ride height. So to the kit specified setup, it is 0mm. So what we'll do is we'll insert it into here, and you feel it go click. We grab our flanged bearing and it goes in just like that. Pretty easy. Okay, so now that's that done, we'll carry on now with the ball diff assembly. Now this one we'll need to pay close attention to how it's done. There are plates and thrust bearings, and this is what adjusts the tension and how much give the diff has. So just move that out of the way. So what we need is our spur gear. This is part of the diff assembly. I believe this is a 96 tooth pinion, spur rather. Yes, 96 tooth. In the manual here, you got optional spurs of 96. It comes with the 96 tooth, but you got optional ones of 80, 78, and 76 tooth. So, but for this 96 tooth, no matter I'm using, it'll be fine. Okay, so now let's get into it. So first of all, what we'll need to do is, with our axle shaft, we need to put one of these plates on. Now what I'm going to do, see that I did that without looking. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I did have some grease with me, some grease. Just bear with me one quick second, folks. I do have, fortunately I have a lot of stuff everywhere, and it kind of becomes a pain in the butt when you want to do something straight away. There we go. Alright, this is some Speed Passion grease. Oh, you're mixing manufacturers. Doesn't matter. It's all good stuff. Now what I'm going to do is put a little bit of this grease on the tips here just on the edges of the mounting plate. The reason for doing that is it will help the diff plate or diff ring to stick to the mounting part. See? Okay. So now the next part is to put in the diff balls. Now if you just give me a quick second. Okay, so now we don't need that grease at the moment. Well, while I'm thinking about it, and while it's open, we'll put it to the next part. Like I said, you don't need a lot, just a little bit. Just enough to keep the diff ring sticking to it. And they can only go in one way because there's a flat edge there. Alright, let's clean that off. Alright, so we shouldn't really need that grease at the moment. Alright, so now the next part is to put the carbide balls in to the diff, into the spur gear. Now be very, very careful when you come to this part. I recommend that you put the balls in a little container. Doesn't have to be what I have here, but it prevents them from rolling away. And these are carbide balls, so they are quite expensive to replace. So now we put them into the holes and they'll just click in. Now they do have an oily residue on them. I recommend that you keep it on the balls to just help them slide into the spur gear. You hear them click in. Once you hear it click, you know it's in all the way. I have to admit, ball diffs have their uses, but they can be a pain in the butt, especially when it comes to maintenance. Although carbide balls are they're pretty durable, but they can crack. Okay, so you hear it rattle. I'll just put it up to the microphone. So they're in nicely. Okay, so now I'll just open this bag up here. Don't need that at the moment. It's for a later video. So now we have the Hootie diff grease. Oh, and it's just erupted everywhere. Okay, so apply a generous amount. Okay. Okay, so you want it to look a bit like that. Now, what I'll do is I'll just carefully get it to rest upright, because now I'll put a little bit on the plates here. You don't want to put tons on, so just be careful. Okay, so you want about that much on there. You can wipe off excess once the diff is assembled. I'll definitely be doing that. Okay, so now just take note of the instructions. So now we need to add some ball bearings. Now, just throw that in the bin. Okay, so just have a look which bearings which go in here. So it's one of those. Okay, well, two of those, sorry. Oh, come on. Every single ball bearing wants to come out except the one that I want. Alright, let's put that over there. Okay, so we'll put one in here and one on the shaft. Alright, so now next part is to put the spur gear on. It'll sit on the bearing and should move freely, no binding whatsoever. Next part is to put the other diff half on, and it should be nice and smooth. Now at this point in time we'll just put it here, because now what we need to do is we need to do the pressure plates or pressure washers and thrust bearing assembly. Now if I can just find my scalpel. Okay, very carefully get it out. Okay, so these are concave or conical shaped washers, and they have to oppose each other, so face outwards. So now what we do is there's another bearing that's required. Okay. Okay, just give me a quick second, folks. I'm sorry, I just have to make sure got it in the right way. Alright, so this bearing, carefully, what I'll do is I'll just put it in. This must be the wrong bearing. Okay, just give me a quick second, folks. Ah, there was just one more bearing that was the same. Okay, I apologise. Like I said, there's always I've always done every build series that I've done. There's always one thing that doesn't seem to go right. I always somehow manage to stuff it up. And to this day, I cannot figure out why. Here we go. So it just slots inwards quite easily. I should try and pick up the pace a little bit. I'm trying not to take too long. Alright, so now another conical or a flanged washer. Note the orientation of it. Goes in like so. Now, a thrust bearing assembly. trying not to let this video go for too long, but unfortunately it's definitely going to be over 15 minutes. Okay, so a little hootie grease is very vital to this section. Doesn't have to be neat. A little more grease. Okay. Just work it in. And that's the assembly, the thrust bearing. Carefully stick it in. And just work it all the way down. Okay. Now, like I said, these are conical washers. They have to oppose each other. Very carefully put it in. Gonna have to use this. Of course, it has to do that. Unbelievable. Okay, I'm going to have to try and carefully... Okay. So it has to face, this one has to face the opposite direction. Okay. Now the next part, which is the last part, is this small nylock nut. How I'll do it, so I'll just do it so it's reasonably tight. Okay, so that's the diff assembly. Now the next part, what we do is we'll get our 1.5mm driver, put a set screw in the part that holds the wheel on, set it in, might have to just put it in a little bit further so it slides in. Now we have a hinge pin, it slides through the entire assembly like so. Then again with our driver, now that part there is assembled. So if you need to adjust the diff tension, you have to pull this part out. Okay. Now the next part is to attach it to the motor pod. So note how many shims you need. There are two main thick shims. It comes with these extra shims here. What they do is they adjust track width. For this part we're just doing it to kit specifications. So it slides in. Now we'll put same shim on this side. Now it says here that there needs to be a small amount of play, and that is because you don't want to damage the bearing. Now 2mm driver, and there is no Okay, so it's just a clamp system. So what we'll do is we'll push it all the way and just leave a little bit of play. Damn it. Okay, so carefully just check for amount of play. Okay, and there it is, folks. That's the diff and axle assembly. I'm sorry it took that long, but it's good to go with it through so you got an idea of what you got to do. So that's the end of part 7. We continue on. Part 8 continues on, and it is the shock assembly. And what I'll do is I'll do both the shock and side damper assembly together. So stay tuned, everyone.